Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Janice, and I am the owner of BDI Playhouse. Bike riding is one of my absolute favorite services that we offer because I feel like it just brings so much freedom and self confidence to children. And it is such a great thing for families. It's kind of like an equalizer, and there's so many different, bikes and ways to adapt things, and that to be able to get kids involved on at least at some level. But if they can have that full independence and be able to ride, it is just can't tell you how many times I've had tears in my eyes to see either live or a video of a kid who pedals off. It's just one of those things that I'm like, yes, I love it. I love that we get to do this. So I asked Dana from our physical therapy department, and she's from our Aurora clinic, and Lori from our occupational therapy department, and she's from Orland Park, to join me because these two have done a lot of bike riding lessons. And they are going to share some. Dana's going to start out by sharing some general information and ideas for us. And Lori will chime in here and there and fill in any gaps. And then we are going to open to your live questions. I wanted to have both Dana and Lori on here just so that we can have this neat, unique opportunity to get both of their perspectives, different disciplines, and have them both weigh in. I think it's going to be super great. So I think it's going to be an awesome session. Enjoy. And with that, I'm going to let Dana go ahead and give us the 411. What do we need to know about learning to ride a bike?
Yes, and there's a lot to learn about riding a bike for sure. So I'm Dana Bucala. I'm a PTA over at the Aurora BDI clinic, and I've been doing pediatric therapy for about 7 years. And I was a recreation therapist before that, and a gymnastics coach even before that. So I've been around kids for a long time and teaching kids, but I never really had experience doing bike riding necessarily because I only experience I had was my two kids. My first child was 5.5 when he rode his bike, and it wasn't a fond memory I look back at because he was yelling, he was screaming, I was angry, I was frustrated, he was falling, there were bandages. It's not something I look back on and go, woo, way to go, mom. It was not a winning moment at all. And then my second born was 3 years old when he rode his bike, and he broke his training wheel on a curb. And as I was taking off his other one, he just got on his bike and rode off into the sunset. So I was very thankful I never had to teach a kid how to ride a bike again because it was such a horrible experience the first time. And now I'm teaching kids how to ride a bike. So, and it's actually my favorite thing to do when it comes seasonal and the spring starts and I start getting bike riders on my schedule. So I really, really love it. I don't know about you, Lori, but I actually, everyone like bike riders, I'm like, I'll take them. I'm excited about them. It's just it's a quick joy for me. I don't know, I really like it. But anyway, so with that, why it's so difficult for kids to ride bikes and why we do get them in house instead of at home is because it's just so hard. It's so hard to ride your bike, and there's so many elements that we as adults don't realize because we don't remember how tough it was as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, or maybe we never even rode before. Maybe as an adult, you never actually got to that point because it was so hard. Because there's many parents that come to us that say, I never learned how to ride a bike, and they always regret it. And so I don't want our kids to ever regret having to never learn to ride a bike. So we love it here. So it's just something, it's like swimming. It's one of those rites of passage that every kid should experience. So why a kid does not want to ride a bike is truly because it's scary. That's what I've I don't know, Lori, did you find the same thing? It's just scary.
Scary and hard.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's not fast. It's not an easy thing that's going to come instantly, and it's scary. So when parents are, upset that their kid doesn't want to ride a bike, that's the thing is parents are on one side of the spectrum. They're really excited to get their kid. This is like they are imagining a bright sunny Sunday afternoon and their kid is riding off into the sunset. And they're cheering them on, running behind them. And that's the image we all have as parents when we finally get to, take those training wheels off. And then the other spectrum is the kid who is absolutely fearful. He is dreading having to get on that bike. And so you have this really excited person and you have this really fearful person and you have this common goal and it's just like a recipe for disaster. And so that's why it just gets kind of thrown up in the air. And then of course it's your kid and the emotions are riding high because there are no filters when it comes to a parent and kid. So mom and dads are frustrated, the kid's frustrated. So it's just kind of a tough one to begin with. So these are just some tips to start bike riding with your child. First, don't ask them if they want to go on a bike ride. They don't. They just absolutely will say no. Try it. Give it a try because it will definitely be a no answer. They will absolutely be terrified when you say, do you want to go ride your bike? They have huge expectations for themselves. They know you have expectations for them and they just would rather avoid it. It's a scary thing. Anything scary, you're going to want to avoid. Why would you want to put yourself in a scary position? So instead, I would recommend that you go out and tell your kid you're going to go pump up their tires. You're going to go put some stickers on their bike. You're going to go fiddle with their bike and maybe a little boy likes to do the nuts and bolts and all that stuff and tightening. I'm going to go give them a wrench and tighten up the bolts on their bike. And they're going to be more curious of like, why is mom and dad fiddling with my bike so much? Bring it out of the garage, tinker with it, wash it, polish it up nice, that kind of thing. No expectations. They know the expectation. When you bring your bike out, you don't have to say a word. They know there's an expectation that they're going to get on that bike. So they're already going to start being anxious about it, but also curious enough to go, what are they doing? And every kid loves to pump up tires. So give them the tire pump. Make them pump up their own tires. It's fun. So that's kind of a good way to start. And I don't know, Lori, do you find do you have any suggestions of how to begin that with any questions to ask them or avoid?
I think, definitely going out for asking them if they want to take a bike ride is definitely not the best. Kind of focusing in on focusing in on the positive and kind of spinning like all those good things that can kind of come from bike riding. Hey, like, let's get to the first square of the sidewalk. Just kind of like setting the bar really low, even though you want them to be going down the street. We know we're not going to get that on the first try. So let's start something small so that they can feel that success. And then you can too. And then it'll just feed that positivity throughout the bike riding experience where it's like, okay, well, yeah, that was like, we got to the first square, even if it was like walking, the bike to that first step in the sidewalk. We just got to remember to start small because it is so intensive of an activity to learn how to do. So if we can all think teeny tiny baby steps, we're going to get bigger wins at the end because we didn't demand too much up front.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of parents have that hope or expectation that, I'm going to go teach Johnny to ride his bike today. And that it's going to be a one-shot deal, and it really will be a much more enjoyable and more successful experience if you don't expect to get them to ride on that first day. It's got to be broken down, and you hope to be able to end each session on a positive note. Then they'll want to, or they'll even ask you to go try again, rather than be like, that was awful, I felt like a failure, and you were all upset. No, I don't want to do that again. And
I think it's big for like building that confidence. If I can get a success, then I'm more likely to come back again to do it. But if I'm not giving you what you want, then it's harder for me to come back because I might fail again.
I absolutely agree. I'll use a lot. I would say try to avoid the quest or the comments because kids you know, what are we doing? Why are we out here? Why is my bike out here? Is, oh, we're going to go learn to ride your bike today. Don't say those words. Try not to, because that puts it in there. And if they didn't learn to ride their bike today, that's a failure to them, and they're going to remember that. So they don't want to go out again because they didn't succeed the first time. So I change your wording around to, we're going to go play on your bike. That's it. Play on your bike. There's no expectations there. We're going to touch your bike. We're going to sit on your bike. We don't know. It's playing. So play on your bike is kind of a better way to, I think, maybe state what we're doing today. Then there's no expectation whether you failed or didn't, you know, there's nothing. So it's a nice, easy way to go. With you're saying that short time, I would say 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. 30 minutes is pushing it. We do 30-minute sessions here, but we also do a lot of parent education with that. And so we pretty much have a kid on the bike for 20 minutes. And let me tell you, it's a hard 20 minutes for that kid because they are straining every muscle in their body to hold on tight to using, you know, their little white knuckles. You'll see it. I'm like, take your hands off, shake them out, because their hands hurt so bad. They're squeezing so hard. They're stabilizing their tongue sometimes. You'll see their tongue sticking out so hard because they just are using every muscle they can to try to hold their bike up, and it's exhausting. So it's exhausting physically, exhausting mentally. They're so anxious, and then 20 minutes, that's enough to put somebody through that kind of stress hormone. So keep it short, and even if they're close, and that's really hard for me to let go. Sometimes we'll do 2 or 3 sessions before a kid will learn how to bike ride. And it's hard for me to let go, especially if I have a little extra time at that half hour, because it's like, oh, they're so close. And it's really easy for a parent to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing. But let me tell you, I've done it over and over again. And that extra one step that they have to do to be independent is a big step. Let it go. Come back to it. It'll be so much better the next time when they're excited about it and not stressed about it. Speaking of stress, your kids will talk a lot through this. What you don't want to do is talk with them. So you want to try to keep as quiet as you possibly can while you're bike riding. If they're asking questions, keep it concise and clear, but stop talking. Don't give instructions. Bike riding is more about feeling than it is about instructions, because they're on fire. They're so revved up. It's so hard for them to understand what you're asking them to do. And then if they're doing it wrong, you're adding more instructions on top of it. And it just bubbles up in these kiddos. So try to keep as quiet as you possibly can and just walk with them. So that's kind of the first thing actually before I even do that, is let them talk. They're going to be in the garage pumping up a tire. What are we doing? Why are we doing that? It's going to drive you crazy. Just let them talk, because it gets it out of them. Let them just get all that anxiety out. First thing I do, I don't know if you do this, Lori, but the first thing I do is have them walk the bike. Pick up the bike off the ground. Once I tell those parents that those training wheels are off, that bike no longer belongs to mom and dad. That is that child's bike. So they pick it up off the floor when it drops. They walk the bike. You don't get to touch that bike anymore. So when I'm instructing or holding a kid on the bike, I don't hold the bike at all. That kid's in charge of the bike. I'm in charge of the child. So it gives them a sense of responsibility. It gives them pride in what they're doing. It's kind of like your first car. You're so excited about getting your first car, and you remember that. That's what this is for the kid. Your first bike ride. They're going to remember this. So it's there. Give it to them. Let them realize that when that bike falls, you'll see the kid kind of look at you like, pick it up. Like, I'm not picking it up anymore. That's your bike. And teach them how to pick it up. I do handlebars only to pick up the bike. If they're touching the seat or the back wheel or anything like that, they're going to fall on top of it. The bike is really wonky. It moves in all kinds of strange ways. Teach a kid to hold the handlebars only. That's all they ever need to touch. To pick up the bike, to maneuver the bike, they don't need to touch the seat. They don't need to touch the wheel. You're going to get pinched fingers somewhere along the line if they're not on the handlebars. So anytime the bike drops, handlebars on the seat side, have them walk and pick it back up. You got to remember that this bike is about as heavy as your child when you're teaching them. It's heavy for them. It's hard. They have to use so much strength. So getting them to walk with the bike in zigzags. You can draw a line on the ground, have them walk around obstacles, put some cones around, whatever you want to do. Walk around me, go both ways, both sides of your bike. All of that is strengthening their core and getting them used to how heavy that bike is. So they need to know how to control that bike. The only way to do that is to feel how the weight of that bike and how much muscle engagement they need. And it takes time for them to understand that. So if we're walking their bike out and they've never touched really the weight of that bike and you're making them get on it, the first time they fall, they have no idea how much power to put through that leg to stop themselves from falling. So making sure that they know that bike and the weight of their bike, it is heavy for them. So they get a ton of core strengthening when they're doing all of that zigzagging around and all that stuff. I don't know if you do that too, Lori. I spend quite a bit of time doing that too.
Yeah. I do a lot of like preliminary skills before I even suggest that they do bike riding sessions or before I even take them outside. So one thing that I end up doing is having them sit on a therapy ball, and then learning to march their feet. So they're kind of getting the pedal movements. If they can't balance on that, then I'm putting them on their backs with their feet up in the air and kind of learning that circular pedaling motion. But once they can get up on the therapy ball and march in place, then they get that mastered. Then I give them like something to hold on to in their hands to kind of simulate, okay, we're going to turn this way. Can you do it like this? And then I kind of teach them how to lean through those turns. So I'm doing a lot of like pre-bike riding stuff before I even tell parents, hey, let's bring that bike in or let's sign up for a bike riding session. Just so I kind of know when the balance factor and the bike weight and all of the sensory environment from outdoors is added, that they have those foundational skills first. And that's really been helpful. And I feel like it takes off some of that stress of like, well, I've got to put like 7 things all together at the same time. I don't know how to do that. You do. Let's remember, like, first, let's sit down. First, let's move your feet on the bike. Let's march your bike while you're sitting on the seat. Okay, now what's our next step? We got to make that turn. How are we going to do that? So when they have that in their background and it's already entrained in their brain, I think that's been very helpful for me to then move to that next step.
Yeah, I find that too. Is I go back to those basic steps of picking up your bike and that kind of thing. And all along the way you're doing that, and you went back even farther than I do, is all those little steps build the confidence that they need to get there. So the anxiety, as they're building their confidence, their anxiety is going down. Now they can listen to the instructions and actually control their bike. Yeah, no, I think that's really good. I was like, we talked a lot about preliminary stuff and prepping, but I really feel like, and I'm going to continue on with the prepping, there's so much prep work and prep time that is involved with a successful bike rider. I think of it like painting a house. Most of your time is going to be spent prepping it, and then painting it it's great. And a good paint job is going to be good prep work, and that's where it's going to reflect. So don't forget to prep your kid. It's really stressful to just take a kid out and put them on a bike and go. So give them a chance to really have those mini successes along the way, like sitting on the ball. I couldn't do that before, and now I can. Or I couldn't turn this way when I was walking my bike, but now I can. Those little itty bitty successes that we really don't see that much because they're just so small, but the kid feels them and they're like, oh yeah. And then you can always go back to them if they're really struggling. Go back to those preliminary, things again, because that was hard for them at one point. And you'll show them, look, remember when you couldn't do this, and now you can, and this is so easy. We're going to get there again, and then build them right back up again. So a lot of times I'll go like 2-3 steps backwards when we get stuck and we get frustrated.
I think, can I just say too, I think it's important to recognize you're working on all those prep skills and you can see that it's not going well, slow down, like you said, back up. Don't keep going forward just because you're on a mission to get them to ride their bike. So if they can't take their bike and walk it, out of the garage, down the driveway, turn it around and come back, set it down on the ground, lift it back up, get on and off. If they can't do those things, you need to do more prep work. Don't just decide to just go for it because, they're that age. it's not about an age, it's about being ready. And that's really important, because if you push it and it ends up being a failed situation, oh, good luck getting them back on again. Then it's really, it's harder and harder. So it's really important to keep it successful from day one.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move on to getting on the bike. So we got all the prep work done, and now we're getting on the bike. How I teach a kid to get on the bike is, I could demonstrate it back here too. I tell them, get on, depending on your kid, motorcycle or a horse. Kids usually like a motorcycle or a horse. And so they're going to, get on the bike using their leg, side over the bike, like that. So when you do that, you're holding the handlebars, you're keeping it steady, tons of core strength. You are balancing tons of hip strength. You have to balance on one leg. There's a lot more to this than people think. So when you get frustrated that your kids can't even get on a bike, you got to understand that this bike is so heavy for them. So when they have to stabilize it, stand on one leg, swing another leg over that they're not used to picking up like that. It takes a lot of hip strength both ways to do this, and you're working in different movement patterns at the same time. So there's a lot involved with getting on a bike. So practicing getting on and off both sides is a really good way to kind of just start. To do that, I tell them like a motorcycle or like a horse, and then I also tell them, most of my kids respond with, it's the cool way to get on a bike, because riding a bike is cool, and that's what they want to be. So I just say, this is the cool way to do it, and they're like, okay, I want to be cool. Most kids will do this. They'll flex their knee and hip, and they'll try to get over. Well, every single time they're going to kick the middle of the bar, and they're going to fall over. So be really cautious with that, with doing this kind of a step over. That's why we really like that swing. Plus, we need all that hip strength when they are riding a bike anyway, because they should have that amount of strength before they start riding a bike. If they have any trouble, it's kind of slowing down from here, but if you have any troubles along the way where you're like, oh, my kid can't walk the bike, or they can't sit on the ball straight, or they can't turn the wheels, or they can't listen for very long, or they're really upset and they're refusing, give us a call. There's pediatric therapists locally in your area. BDI Playhouse, we do bike riding in Orland Park and Aurora. Give us a call, and maybe we can troubleshoot with you and try to help you out to see what's going on, why they're struggling so much. So all of this is very generalized to kids, and one size does not fit all for sure. And then speaking of that too, is some kids have physical disabilities and that kind of thing. And there's a million modifications and adaptations you can do on bikes that really, truly, kids with special needs really have those special needs. And a special needs bike for one kid is not going to be good for another kid. So bring them in, let's see what their abilities are, so we know what they can use and can't use and that kind of thing. So they can be successful on their bike, because truly every kid wants to ride a bike. So anyway, so when they're on their bike, I have them stand on the pedals. I am going to tell them, I do no surprises. I don't do that push off and hope they survive. I try not to surprise them at anything, and I give them as much control as they possibly can, because they are so nervous at this point. So when they sit on their bike, keep their seats. I don't know if you have a sizing technique, Lori, too, but for me, we get all kinds of sizes of bikes that come to our door, and they have one bike, and it may not be a good fit for them. But I have to teach them how to ride their bike on that bike that they brought. So, and it works. For some reason, the kids, they adapt to it. But my big rule of thumb with sizing is making sure that their feet are solid on the floor, on the ground, while they're seated, not standing, seated. So that way they feel the ground beneath them. They easily can tilt, and their foot's going to come down, and they're not on their tippy toe or trying to find that foot to the ground, and the bike is tipping over on them. They're pretty solid on that floor. Taking the training wheels off and using that particular bike is a great bike to start with. Smaller, I feel, is the better instead of bigger. I know everyone wants to get that new bike, and you're going to ride your new bike, but we get a new bike to grow with them. And when you're learning, it's really hard to have a bike that's bigger and heavier than you. So that training wheel bike that they learned on in the first place is a great bike to start with, because you're already used to it. So it really does kind of help out with that. If you have a sizing, that's my rule of thumb, is just get those feet on the floor, lower the
I
feet.
really like flat feet because then it gives them that stability factor, and that immediately changes how anxious they are. Because if I get a kid with a bike and they're stuck on their tippy toes and that's the only way to work because it's just fitting them at the tippy toe stage, it's so much harder because they don't feel stable and then they don't feel secure, so they're going to be less apt to participate because they have a greater fear of falling. So yeah, I agree, flat feet is the best. And then too, I know you spoke about like the weight of the bike. There's a ton of different options out there, and it's one thing that if you're, you know, a new parent to a new bike rider and you need to start off with a bike, kind of having that is one of the criteria that you're looking for. If you pick up the bike and you're like, oh my goodness, this thing is really heavy, your kid is going to think it's that much heavier times 10. And so you want to be mindful, like, yeah, we all want to get a pretty and cute bike, but like this one weighs like 25 pounds versus another one that might weigh 15. So let's maybe go for the 15-pound bike. And I know I did that with my kids, teaching them how to bike ride. We went for a super light bike, and I know it was very helpful for them because they didn't have to get pulled over by the bike because of its weight. They were able to manage it so much better. So if you can, and you're starting out new, just kind of like take that into consideration as just how much work they're going to have to do to pull up that bike when it does tip over or when they fall, because it's a big game changer for sure.
So when they're on their bike, this is my next step that I do. So I make sure they're sitting, and then I'm going to put their feet on the pedals. I'm going to let them know I got you. I'm going to hold them underneath their armpits, or stand up a little bit, around their rib cage. Really solid. Our hands are going to almost touch each other on a little kid like that. So we have them solidly. I straddle the bike behind it, and I'm holding the kid on top of it. I'm going to let them hold their handlebars. I'm going to let them play a little bit. We're not going anywhere yet. So we're just going to turn. This is how we balance our bike. Then I'm going to have them put their feet on the pedals. Just hold them there. I'm going to say, try your hardest to keep your feet on the pedals. And I'm going to tip them over a little bit, tip them over a little bit. And I just show them that I got you. I can hold your weight. Don't worry about anything else except for pedaling. That's it. So that's kind of where I take all of the demands out. The one thing you have to think about is pedaling. And they already know how to pedal because they've pedaled their tricycle, they've pedaled their training wheel bike. So because this is the next step up, and they're like, oh, so it kind of takes the anxiety out too, is I have no expectations of you. You just go, I got you. So the first thing that we'll do before we even go is I will trust them in a sense and show them that they also have themselves. So I will go, okay, I'm going to tip you over. I want you to take your foot off the pedal and stop yourself from falling. And they immediately take their foot off. I haven't had a kid that didn't. And then we tip to the right, they put their foot down. And then I say, okay, even if I'm going to trick you this time, I'm just going to let you go, and it might go over to the left, it might go over to the right, and you got to figure out which side it's going and get your foot off really quickly. I'm there so that they can't fall down. So they start learning those protective reflexes over and over and over again. So we do that a couple times, and I go, well, bike riding's easy. You can't fall down. I have you. You have you. How can you even fall down? And they're like, oh, and you just see this melting, like, oh, this relief that comes over them before we even start. So I really like that activity beforehand. It's kind of my favorite thing besides them actually running. That I won't miss that one every single time. I will just show them that they got it. They have themselves. It gives them a little more confidence that they have control over this. Another thing that, so once we start riding, I show them to, I tell them, I'm not going to let you go. You let me know when you want me to let you go. And that's it. That's the rules today. And they're like, okay, well, I'm never going to tell you to let me go. That's kind of what they're thinking. And so that way they don't have to worry about it. They know, okay, Christina got me, mom and dad got me. They're not going to do that surprise, woo, there you go. Really try to avoid that. That's a harsh one. It's not a good ending to that one. So I will hold them securely, same exact thing over that rib cage, and I will just walk with them. I'm not running with them. I'm not bent over. I'm not holding their bike. I'm not putting myself in a really awkward position. My posture is good. Their posture is good because I got their trunk. So we're just walking. And while we're walking, he or she is talking and talking and talking, and it's going to drive you crazy. And I want you to just let them talk because they're getting it all out. They're just spewing at this point. And so try to guide that conversation away from biking and, hey, how did you do on your video game today? Hey, what were you watching on your iPad? What do you want for dinner tonight? And just walk with them, because biking, again, is all about feeling. They just need to feel it. And then little by little, you can throw an instruction in there. Hey, can you turn your bike this way and that way? Can you turn it left and right? And we can sway back and forth. And they're like talking to you and they're just doing it. So there's no expectation. The anxiety is low. And we're just walking. The walking part like that is probably most of my session, is walking and talking with the kid, and I'm holding them securely. As they progress, I'm going to start progressing my hands. So once they start kind of getting the feel of it a little bit more, and I feel that they're starting to get those balance reactions, to go back a little bit, balance reactions for a kid are on the handlebars. I love that you were saying, Lori, about the leaning thing. I completely take that out, but I've never thought about it that way with the ball skills like that. But adults have, I think we think about how do I ride a bike? And we don't ride a bike like a kid learns to ride a bike. We have evolved over time very tiny little balance reactions that have our neuromotor pathways have evolved over time as we ride bikes. And we do lean when we turn, and we do move a little bit on our bike. If a kid chooses or does a lean, where we all go lean into the turn or lean on your bike to balance, they're just gonna go. So yeah, don't do it. Keep your trunk as steady as you possibly can. Their arms are gonna do all the balance. And that's a new motor skill too. Nobody balances on their hands unless they're doing handstands. So this is a new way to balance. So you have, as you're standing on your feet do this all the time. Well, that's what we're going to be doing. A straight bike doesn't balance. We have to move that bike back and forth to continue balancing. And so they have to continue to feel that over and over and over again to get the feel of that balancing, and how much graded control their arms and trunk need to do to actually balance the bike. So I try to avoid the word lean, in other words, because I feel like a lot of parents go, just lean, and I'm like, yeah. So that's where I start. I will go from their trunk to the top of their shoulders, to the back of their shoulders, to one hand in the back. That's my progression for holding the kids. So we'll go from here. And then I have them really securely up here. As I'm doing these movements, I'm showing them, I'm pushing my hands this way, this way, this way. And immediately their arms go, oh, okay, okay, okay. So you feel where that bike is going, and with it leaning this way, you lean to the left. If it's leaning this way, we lean to the right. A child has the opposite balance reactions to that. If we're leaning this way, a kid automatically thinks, yeah, we better go this way. That makes sense to them, and then they fall over. So we want to actually teach them. So we work on leaning. Okay, I'm going to lean you over. All right, turn it to the left, or turn it to the right, depending on which side we're leaning. So you turn into the fall. So I'll teach the kids that as well. But when I'm doing that, I have complete control of them over their shoulders. So I got left and right. And then as they're getting better, I can feel I have a lighter touch on them. I'll slowly move it to the scapulas. I'm using my fingers, I'm using my thumbs this way, that way. And then I can still have those little balance, because the balance reactions are really the last thing that I find work. So then I go fingers, thumbs, right down their little spine right here. So I got their little scapulas. And then at that point, they're pretty much riding away from me, but they still want that touch on them. And so I don't know, Lori, what do you do for like the next step for like letting them go? Because that's like, I don't know, or is your handling techniques different than mine?
No, they're pretty similar. I think I've kind of progressed my handling from like being a little bit more hands-on to being a little bit more hands-off, using like the belt with the loops. And then, like you said, going from like that trunk hold to the shoulders. And then to their back. And then, like you said, I definitely don't let go of them until they say, or until I give them the prompt of like, all right, you've held your balance. Are you okay with me letting you go? So then they have that choice, and I'm never just going to let them go, because that is like a huge anxiety issue related to that let go. And can I do this independently? So yeah, I think we're right on the same page as far as that goes. And then the one thing I do, like once I know they're pretty much ready for me to let them go, is practice that fall. So while they still have that gate belt on, all right, well, falls happen. So we need to prep you for that. So it doesn't go, oh, my first fall, I'm never getting back on. Like when they're in that bike riding session, I give the parents a warning ahead of time, like, okay, we will eventually let your kid fall safely, so that they get over it. And then they can learn that it's not a big deal. Falls happen. I'm going to get right back on. And I think that's hugely important for parents to see. And so they can get you modeling what the response to their child falling should be. I had it one time where the kid fell down, grandpa brought him to therapy. And so we came back because he ended up scraping his knee a little bit. And this kid was very, very anxious and like a little bit sensitive to any scrape or bump on his body. So we came back to the clinic and we said, we'll clean it up. It'll be just fine. So he was perfectly fine, which was a shocker. But we get in and grandpa's like, you fell down? And I was like, that is exactly what we don't need. So I think it's very helpful to teach the parents, hey, here's the importance of the response that we're going to give to this kid. We need to show them it's not a big deal so that they're okay to get back on, because that's the whole point. We want them to be continuous bike riders, not, I mastered it, now that's over, and I'm going to put my bike away.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love that. So progressing to independent rider now. So at that point, we got our handling, parents are, letting their kids fall, things are going well, and that kid's ready to go. They're ready to go. This is when I will give them, same thing, I will give them that option of, can I let you go? And of course they'll say no. I don't even know why I ask, but I do, because I try to be, try to give them the control. I say, okay, that's fine. I say, can I let you go maybe just for 1 second? And they go, nope. And I go, okay, we'll just walk around, and I'll go 1, and then I put my hands back on their shoulder again. And they go, oh, and that was just 1 second. Sorry, I kind of, that's my one surprise I give them. And but you see this like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And I'm like, see, not too bad. I said, can you do it again? Yes. Okay. And I always get a yes after that first one. So then I go, okay, 1. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was way too easy for you. I said, what do you think? 2 seconds? 1, 2? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, okay, 1, 2. And then we just progress from there. So I'll skip numbers along the way. But most of the time we can just keep going and going and going until they're about 20 seconds. Once they're at about 20 seconds, I'm literally walking next to them and we're just talking and they're going. And I'm counting and just counting and counting. One thing that that progression sounds lovely and it sounds miraculous and wonderful. I'm not saying there's not tears somewhere along the way. I'm not saying there's not upset, that kind of thing. And when there is, I just go back a couple steps. That's all it is. I said, okay, no big deal. Let's go back. So instead of pushing them through that frustration to keep going, backtrack. So once your kid gets really anxious, go take a break, go get a drink of water, come back to those early steps again and start from there. You're going to go through those really quickly. And then you're going to come right back to where you were. So taking those little breaks is not a bad idea. But yeah, it's definitely, it's maybe not that off into the sunset kind of feel to it, but it's not what my experience was. And it's somewhere in the middle. It's kind of what you're hoping for, is some kind of like middle ground here that, your kid can do this on their own. You haven't had a major fit. We're not crying. We're not bandaged up and that kind of thing. And it's not a big, this horrible loss. I teach riding first, and then I'll teach starting the bike and stopping the bike and obstacles. I just eliminate that completely until we know how to ride the bike independently. I don't know if you do that too, Lori. That's kind of just my whole thing that I've done over time, because it's all too much.
Yeah. the one thing that I might do slightly different is like while they're still doing the walking the bike aspect, just because of where we are in Orland, I'll have them walk their bike to a little like loop that's nearby. So then I'm looking like, okay, we need to work on that safety aspect. Can you walk your bike to cross the street? What do we have to do before we can get into the street? So looking at that safety skill of, am I scanning my environment to make sure I'm safe before I then keep going? So I might work on safety slightly earlier than you. But again, it's just kind of depending on each kid as to when you can pull that in.
I just kind of try to like eliminate anything else. I'm like, let's just dumb this down to one thing. You pedal. That's it. And then I can start layering as we go. Because they come in so high with emotion when it comes to the bike riding. So I don't know, just some few tips real quick. I know we're running out of time and everything. But just kind of some tips if you can take something from this, from bike riding and helping your kid bike ride successfully is just reduce your talking. That is a big one for parents. Parents love to explain things to their kids and why they're doing it and that kind of thing. A little one. So less talking, the better. Let your kid talk. That's okay. So don't tell them to quiet down or anything like that. Let them get it out because they need to. Hold your child, not the bike. Save your back. Save yourself. Don't end up sore where you don't even want to take your kid out for a bike ride after that. Hold your bike seat, hold the handles, or not, don't hold the handles and don't hold the bike seat. Hold your child. Let them control the bike. You control them. Have your child pick up the bike, maneuver the bike, walk the bike. Teach them how to respect their bike. Work on their kickstand, keeping it up instead of pushing it down. That is one thing that I do teach them, though, is shoving their bike down and letting go of it. And when they fall, let go of your bike. You don't have to go down with it. Your bike's going to be okay. You're not. So let go of your bike. So I do teach that a little bit, too. So if you ever want to kind of add that one in the mix. Keep your bike lessons short, 20 minutes at most. So try to really reduce the amount of time you're out there with them to make it exciting the next time they go out. Pick up your bike with the handles, not anything else. They don't need to touch anything else but the handles. They can have complete control and not this way and not that way. Regular handle position, hands over, thumbs down. Make sure your child has their feet on the ground when you start. Keep them as grounded as they possibly can. And control your emotions. Really try to take a step back to not let yourself get so emotional with them. If they're getting emotional, like Lori was saying, don't get emotional with them. Try to mimic what you want from them. So if you want them to be calm, be calm. If you don't want, if they're all excited and upset and you're all excited and upset, we're just getting more upset together. So try to be their role model on how you want them to act. Calmly talk to them. Calm, it's so hard, but try to have that demeanor. And then if anything, if your child is, you're not seeing progress, if your child is constantly refusing to go out and you really can't convince them to get out there, they're unable to pick up their bike or control their bike, and for any other reason they're challenged with riding a bike, call us. We're here. We love to help. We love bike riding sessions. Like I said, it's one of my favorite things to do. I just think it's just a great thing. I know we're taking it from you, which I don't want to have to do, kind of thing, because I know parents, they feel like, oh my gosh, I failed because I have to give another adult a thing. Be okay with giving another adult your kid to do this. There'll be plenty of other milestones that you get to do with them, and it's okay.
And more practice time at home too. Even if they get it the first time with us, there's going to be a lot more practice to be done for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let us help you troubleshoot what the problems are. And then just remember, these are general recommendations, that every child's different. And that's why we invite people to consult on our website, help them brainstorm ideas, and every child's different and they have all specific needs. So let us help. We're here for you. Anything else, you guys?
No, I think we got the basic points.
We do have a blog on this topic as well. So check that out on our website. If you go to our website under information, you'll see a link to blogs. I will post the link to the bike riding blog when we post this video as well. And then also that we do offer free screenings and consultations. So there's links to that on our website, bdiplayhouse.com. And I'm happy to help you out. This is what we do. We love to support our community. So let us know how we can help. You can also send us questions through Facebook or through our website as well. If you just want to ask some questions, we're here for you. So thank you so much. Good luck getting those kids rolling. It's that time of year. Have fun with it and just stay relaxed. And thank you so much to Dana and Lori for joining in. This was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.